Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, let's begin with the latest from the Republican National Convention, a dramatic moment on the first night in Milwaukee.
Please welcome Donald J. Trump.
The former president entered Fiserv Arena to a standing ovation with his right ear in a bandage from the bullet wound he suffered on Saturday. This was Trump's first public appearance since that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. Convention speakers are throwing their support behind their nominee, including South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Donald J. Trump is our man in the arena. He will never stop fighting for us. He will never stop, and now he is bringing all of us together.
Now, former President Trump did not speak at the convention last night. He did walk into a box near his family and stand next to Senator J.D. Vance, the man he had tapped just hours before as his running mate.
Well, Nathan, Senator Vance is already making it clear that he'll boost former President Trump's populist stance on foreign policy. In his first interview since getting the vice presidential nod, Vance told Fox's Sean Hannity how Trump would bring the war in Ukraine to an end.
I think what President Trump has promised to do is go in there, negotiate with the Russians and Ukrainians, bring this thing to a rapid close so that America can focus on the real issue, which is China. That's the biggest threat for our country, and we're completely distracted from it.
Senator J.D. Vance on Fox News. Republican Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia says Vance will be able to help Trump deliver a domestic message as well.
For me, and what I'm hearing every day is that Americans and Georgians can't afford another 4 years of Joe Biden. I think that is a message that J.D. Vance can deliver.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp appeared on Bloomberg's Balance of Power from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee.
And Karen, J.D. Vance joining the GOP tickets also being cheered in a portion of Silicon Valley. We get that part of the story from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter in San Francisco.
Much of the area here has been a liberal bastion, a Democratic stronghold. But recently a louder voice is being heard here in the Valley, that of smaller tech and venture capital. Vance has been there, and today some in tech cheering one of their own closer to the Oval Office. Elon Musk saying, great choice. David Sachs calling Vance an American patriot. Peter Thiel, who has had his on and off relationship, cheering the pick. And of course, the GOP hope is that some of these techies will pony up when it comes to financial support. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thanks. Well, Ed did mention Elon Musk approving the Vance VP selection. The billionaire is now pledging to pour $45 million a month into a pro-Donald Trump political group. It's a move that would flood the Republican nominee's re-election effort with cash through the November election. Musk endorsed Trump in a post on X after the assassination attempt.
Well, as for President Biden, Karen, he's now saying it was a mistake to say he wanted to put a bullseye on Donald Trump. But in an NBC News interview with Lester Holt, the president says his opponent's rhetoric has been more incendiary.
The truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate.
Now, President Biden also told NBC's Lester Holt he plans to debate former President Trump again in September.
Well, this morning, Nathan, President Biden is unveiling a new proposal to cap rental costs across the country. The plan would strip a tax benefit from landlords who increase a tenant's rent by more than 5% per year. The measure would need to be approved by Congress.
Turning to the economy now, Karen, Jay Powell says recent data give policymakers more confidence that inflation is heading toward the Fed's 2% goal. The Fed chair spoke with David Rubenstein at the Economic Club of Washington.
On inflation, in the first quarter, we didn't make any more progress. The second quarter, actually, we did make some more progress. We've had now 3 better readings, and if you average them, that's a pretty good pace.
Fed Chair Powell also insists he's not sending a message about rate cut timing. The next decision from the Fed is July 31st.
Well, on the equity front, Nathan, we get second quarter earnings this morning from 2 of the nation's biggest banks, and we get more from Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
Bank of America warned back in April that second quarter net interest income could be at a, quote, low point for the year, expected to fall for a third quarter straight. Meantime, Morgan Stanley may post its largest revenue gain since 2021 with an expected increase of 6%. That's thanks to equity trading and a resilient fixed income market. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Tom, thanks. We're also watching shares of Match this morning. They're up 8% in early trading. Activist investor Starboard's built a stake of more than 6.6% in the dating app. That's according to a letter reviewed by Bloomberg News. Starboard plans to push for a sale of Match if the company fails to turn around its operations.
And in Germany, Nathan, shares of Hugo Boss are plunging to their lowest level since 2021. The high-end fashion retailer slashed its profit guidance for the year, citing weakness in key markets like China and the UK. And Hugo Boss shares down more than 8% this morning. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The New York Attorney General and New York Civil Liberties Union have filed a lawsuit against Nassau County. It comes after County Executive Blakeman signed a new law that bans transgender females from participating in women's sporting events at county-run parks and facilities. Fellow Republican County Legislator Howard Capel.
It's a common sense kind of measure because biological males are stronger, they're bigger, they're faster.
Gabriela Larios is an attorney at the NYCLU.
This law, just like the executive order that came before it, clearly violates our state's anti-discrimination laws.
Audio courtesy of WNBC. Blakeman signed the order after it passed along party lines in the county legislature. Jury deliberations will continue for a third day today in the corruption trial of Senator Bob Menendez. Yesterday, the jury deliberating over 18 charges at the bribery trial of the New Jersey Democrat asked the judge in Manhattan federal court if unanimity is required to acquit on a single count. Hours later, they recessed for the day without reaching a verdict. The Menendez trial is in its 10th week. A jury has already found former NRA Chief Executive Wayne LaPierre guilty of misspending millions of dollars to fund his lavish lifestyle. Now the organization's independence will be decided in the second phase of a New York civil trial in New York. In the first phase of the corruption trial brought by New York State Attorney General Letitia James, a jury found LaPierre guilty. Now prosecutors are seeking remedies, including one that would curb the NRA's independence. A judge will decide whether the organization will be subject to 3 years of outside monitoring of its finances and whether LaPierre will be permanently banned from ever returning to NRA leadership. Storms with tornadoes blew through Iowa, Illinois, including Chicago, and Indiana, downing trees and power lines and cutting power to more than 460,000 people. This woman lives in Genoa, Illinois.
Transformers in our backyards all blew and a tree fell onto them. Now we're trying to figure out what all has been affected out here. Trees are everywhere. We were already hit with branches in the backyard.
The National Weather Service confirmed that a tornado hit Des Moines, Iowa. Special Counsel Jack Smith will appeal a Florida judge's decision dismissing the federal case charging Donald Trump with mishandling classified information and obstruction. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon tossed out the case after finding Attorney General Merrick Garland's appointment of Smith as special counsel to investigate Trump was unconstitutional. The government will now take the fight to the 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John.
All right, Karen, tonight at Globe Life Field, Arlington, Texas, it's the 94th Baseball All-Star Game. National League won last year, first time since 2012, and the NL starting pitcher tonight is Pirates rookie Paul Skeens. It was just a year ago that he got drafted first overall. He has very much lived up to the hype off a great season at LSU. Aaron Judge will be facing Skeens tonight.
That's exciting, gotten a chance to watched a couple of his games, the past couple of weeks, since he got called up, and it's special stuff, man, electric stuff. Not only is you can talk about the velocity on his pitches and what he does, but the guy's a pitcher, man. He can work all 3, 4, 5 of his pitches, throw it in every part of the zone, any count.
Judge batting fourth in the AL order, right behind his Yankee teammate Juan Soto, who's playing in a third straight All-Star game with a third different team. The Orioles' Corbin Burns starts tonight for the AL. Last night, the Home Run Derby, it came down to the Dodgers' Teoscar Hernandez and the Royals' young star Bobby Witt Jr., who at the 2018 All-Star game won the high school Home Run Derby. His last swing to try and tie Hernandez came up just short. Hernandez won 14-13, first Dodger to win the Derby. Pete Alonso is going for 3 wins in the last 4 years. He went out in the first round. Alonso, the lone Mets representative tonight. In Abu Dhabi, U.S. Olympic basketball team had a struggle but got by Australia 98-92. Anthony Davis, 17 points, 14 rebounds. The U.S. has another tune-up game tomorrow in Abu Dhabi against Nikola Jokic and Serbia. That's who their first Olympic game is against. Wild night in Miami. Before Colombia's loss to Argentina in the Copa America final, there was bedlam, fans storming in without tickets. And then after the game, the president of Colombia's federation and his son were both arrested. They face felony battery charges after an altercation with a security guard. John Stash, we're Bloomberg Sports.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak with me, Nathan Hager, and Karen Moskow. I want to get more now on the presidential race with former President Donald Trump, now officially the Republican nominee for a third time. 39-year-old Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. Joining us now is presidential historian Andy Rudalevich, professor of government at Bowdoin College. Andy, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing in a loop that image of former President Trump marching into Fiserv Arena in Milwaukee with his fist pumping and the bandage over his ear. But I want to get your impressions of the message we're hearing from the Republican National Convention after the first night. What are your takeaways?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Good morning. I think it's a little bit of a mixed message, to be honest. Excuse me. On the one hand, you've got this sort of move towards unity, and certainly a very united Republican Party that was rapturous in its response to the appearance of former President Trump. On the other, you have, sort of these calls for unity up against, a number of speeches that were not particularly unifying. And then, of course, the naming of Senator J.D. Vance as the new vice presidential nominee. Vance, of course, was hugely critical of President Trump back in 2016. He's come around. He is, now an aggressive proponent of the, MAGA philosophy. But he's, again, not necessarily a unifying figure, not necessarily somebody who's going to expand the Trump base beyond those who are already devoted to him. So, I thought this might be a chance for a reset, where we had, a sort of a broadening of the ticket, maybe to include Trump critics like Nikki Haley. Instead, Trump is sort of doubling down. So there's an interesting decision there, and we'll see how it plays more widely.
Since you mentioned Nikki Haley, we are expecting the one-time rival, the one-time UN ambassador in the Trump cabinet, to make her appearance at the RNC this evening. What are you expecting to hear from former Ambassador Haley tonight?
Yeah, well, I assume that whatever she has planned as a text has been pretty well vetted by the Trump campaign, but it'll be interesting to see if she continues to, if she rather chooses to hew to the sort of more isolationist line with regards, for example, to NATO or Ukraine, that the top of the ticket and now number 2 on the ticket have been pretty vocal about. She was sort of more in the sort of traditional, foreign policy conservative lane during the primary season, and of course was pretty critical of President Trump as, also being old and perhaps past his time in office. I imagine all that is gone. She's going to talk about unity. She'll talk about the need for everyone to come together, and I assume that she will, say that President Biden's not up to that task.
To have a running mate like J.D. Vance, who sort of mirrors former President Trump's populist positions on foreign and domestic policy, does that put the wing represented by Nikki Haley sort of on the sidelines in the GOP?
Oh, for sure. And of course, she was disinvited to the convention, to start with. It's after the assassination attempt that was revised quickly. And of course, she had already released her delegates to former President Trump and had said she would vote for him. But yeah, in terms of the policies that the Republican platform has adopted, and certainly those espoused most loudly by now the two people on the ticket, I don't see a lot of room for that part of, what was a pretty big part of the Republican Party over time to have much prominence.
In the time we have left, Andy, I'd want to get your thoughts as well on the latest comments we've heard from President Biden, putting himself out there much more in recent days, not just after the debate performance, but after the assassination attempt and the interview with NBC News last night, sort of defending his rhetoric. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, certainly they've been trying now to make a clear distinction between the sort of attacks on Trump policy and attacks on Trump the person. Maybe the Republican convention will give them more chances to focus on substance rather than personality. But of course, Trump is all about personality, and it's pretty hard to distinguish the two in a lot of ways. And Biden, honestly, was not that careful in trying to do so before the assassination attempt. I mean, we use martial language all the time. We take a shot at something. I think the use of the word bullseye was probably unfortunate, but surely not literal. On the other hand, for Biden to be on that foot is probably not great. He wants to be in a position where he is, in fact, showing that he is, empathetic, that he is unifying. And, the more he's talking about his own rhetoric, that's obviously going to be difficult.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond. You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM Channel 119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.